Ginger onion soup is one of our family favorite recipes on cold days or blustery days or at the early onset of symptoms, whether it's allergies or cold and flu. So, this is kind of just a little bit of an herbal modification to your standard chicken broth. So, we're going to start with I'm going to do half the amount that this recipe calls for, but starting with chicken broth, I actually have chicken bone broth because, as much as possible, trying to get those nutrients and the healthy protein that you can get from the bone broth rather than just chicken broth, but any chicken broth will do. Next, we need onions and garlic. So any onions and garlic are going to be just fine in this particular recipe. I happen to have some fresh out of my garden. I have a little spring garlic bulb that I'm so excited about, and a couple of spring onions. So as we discussed up in the individual herbs, fresh spring onions and onion greens are a little bit better for warming up the sinuses and for the acute onset of symptoms, where onion bulbs are going to go a little bit deeper into the lungs, but they're both equally good. We like to use both of them, so really just whatever you have. So adding your fresh onions in, just like in the last recipe, we're going to strain all of this out later. Just looking for some of that nice pungent spiciness. You can go as high up the onion as you like. Those onion greens are going to be just as helpful at getting that aromatic nature into our broth. And then a little bit of garlic. Garlic is very similar to onions, horseradish, and mustard. It has that really pungent nature that helps to open up the sinuses, and it has antimicrobial effects, antibiotic effects, particularly used to benefit the digestive system in Chinese medicine. Just like onions and horseradish, the more raw that it is, the more pungent it's going to be, and the more of that antimicrobial effect you're going to get. The more you cook it, the sweeter it gets, the more it's going to protect the digestive system. And a couple of inches of ginger. So coming in again, we're straining this, so I'm going to leave the skins on since we'll be peeling them off. The recipe calls for 2 inches of ginger, and since we're just doing half the recipe, we'll use a little bit less than that. This time I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller just to release more of the juices. So all of these white and spicy herbs and culinary herbs help to affect the respiratory system. As we talked about earlier, the white color affects the respiratory system, or the yellow color works more on the digestive system, but they're so intricately related that working on both of them together is an important aspect of treating your immune system and treating your digestive system. Working on both at the same time is more effective than just tackling one or the other. All right, now we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon. You can add powdered cinnamon if you have it, or I have cinnamon sticks, and so I'm going to throw 1 cinnamon stick into my mix. We're going to, because I have some astragalus slices and this makes excellent broth, I'm going to throw a couple of astragalus sticks into the mix. And some fresh peppercorns just for good measure. So these are just little bonus add-ins that I like to do in my broth. They're not in the recipe, but they make for more flavorful um, tea and adds to the spiciness. So much like the last recipe, we're going to go ahead and simmer this on the stove for just long enough to get it warmed up and let the aromatic nature of the fresh onions and garlic get into this soup. And since it's already cooked, we just need to cook it for a minute. So we'll boil it for about 5 minutes and then we'll strain. Pot has is just coming up to a boil. You can see the ginger and the garlic and the fresh green spring onions in there. Our cinnamon stick, and you can see the astragalus slices. So when we look at the overall combination of this mixture, we have warming and pungent herbs that help to open up the sinuses and open up the lungs, relieve any congestion, and then in a nice, nourishing bone broth that helps to bring in that healthy moisture and build up the immune system. So we're going to let this just gently simmer for about 5 more minutes, and then we'll be ready to strain it and drink. All right, this has finished simmering, and now it's time to strain it out. I originally found this recipe for the acute onset of a common cold or flu when you very, very, very first suspect that maybe you've been compromised. But I like it a lot for allergies too, just to help open up the sinuses and relieve any lung congestion. So if you're using this after maybe you've been exposed to a cold or flu, or after you've been out on a cold, rainy day, the advice is to make a cup and then to make a really, really hot bath, hot enough that you break a sweat, and to drink the broth in the bath and sweat it out for as long as you can. Once you've broken a sweat, then get out, dry off, bundle up and get into bed and try to sleep it off as much as you can, and hopefully that will prevent it from progressing any further. So this is our ginger onion tea. We're going to let this cool down, and then we'll give it a taste and tell you what we think. Now that we have our spicy cup of ginger onion soup, go ahead and give that a little bit of a taste. Try to really notice the effect of the fresh ginger, the fresh onion, the fresh garlic. Feel how it feels in your body. One thing to keep in mind if you decide to do this with the warm bath, particularly after a cold, damp day, make sure that it's warm enough you break a sweat, but not so warm that you get overheated and dizzy. So just find that nice, cozy place and enjoy your cup of really herbal broth.